Hello, friends on Zoom and on YouTube. We'll begin our devotional in just a few moments. Good morning, friends on Facebook. We will begin our daily devotional in just a moment. Good morning, friends and fellow pilgrims. Welcome to our daily devotional on this Wednesday, November 11th, Veterans Day 2020. We are studying the book of 1 Thessalonians for a few weeks now, and we're in the last chapter, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 this week. And we're looking particularly at verses 1 through 11 of chapter 5. And we're going to focus on the topic of a thief in the night, which is mentioned here. In order to do this, I want to read verses 1 through 8 rather than just focusing on verse 2 in which the phrase occurs. So we're going to read 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 8. Now, concerning the times and the seasons, brothers and sisters, you do not need to have anything written to you, for you yourselves know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. When they say there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them, as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and there will be no escape. But you, beloved, are not in darkness for that day to surprise you like a thief, for you are all children of light and children of the day. We are not of the night or of darkness. So then let us not fall asleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who are drunk, get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober and put on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation. Okay, so this is a passage that emphasizes that the day of the Lord, or the return of Christ, will come like a thief in the night. This is very consistent, of course, with the gospel teachings in which Jesus himself speaks of the day of the Lord coming as a thief in the night. And we have discussed this week in Bible study last night and also earlier this week, we've discussed how, last week as well, about how many books and discussions and television programs there's been about the return of Christ and the focus being on a particular day and a particular time. One important note about this passage the first verse when it says the times and the seasons. This is simply another way of saying a time of judgment. And what Paul is saying here, I think, is that the time of judgment is always upon us. That is, we never know when we're going to be put in a time of judgment, whether that's in a personal trial or suffering, or suffering alongside someone else, or even our own deaths. So what Paul, I think, is saying here, and he's putting a lot of emphasis on the distinction between those who live faithfully and in hope, and those who lack faith or who do not have this sort of hope. And a big part of the distinction comes down to being aware that the day of the Lord comes unexpectedly, that the time of judgment arrives in a very unexpected way, and that what's important, because we're aware of that, what's important is that we make ourselves ready each and every moment of our lives we make ourselves ready for that moment. And Paul is emphasizing this distinction primarily because he wants to emphasize the hope that we have in Christ, that we live faithfully because of that hope in our own salvation. And we do this because we want to be united with God. We want to be with Christ. And so we don't live in fear of the day of judgment. This is not a sorrowful thing. The day of judgment is actually a glorious opportunity for us to live as God would have us live. And it's a great comfort, not a horrible thing, because we're ready. And so he distinguishes between the drunk and the sober, not so much that because he's making a statement about alcohol, though it may be related. The primary thing that he's talking about here is simply being ready, being sober, being aware that death could come at any time, that trials could come at any time, and accepting of that, living in acceptance of that, and anticipation of that, and not living in fear or trying to avoid death and trials, but being ready for them. So I think this is his emphasis, and I think this is why this message is a message of comfort to the Thessalonian Christians. Paul is essentially saying, you're already ready. You already have the breastplate of love and faith and the hope of salvation. You're ready for the day of judgment, whenever that comes. And I think this ought to be a comforting message for us as well. Let's close with this word of prayer. Again, I'm going to use Psalm chapter 62, verses 5 through 8 as our closing prayer. My soul, wait thou in silence for God only, for my expectation is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my high tower. I shall not be moved. With God as my salvation and my glory, the rock of my strength and my refuge is in God. Trust in him at all times, ye people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Thank you for joining me this morning from Pilgrim Congregational Church. I'm Patrick Horn. I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.